So, when we're doing shifts of long distances, there's primarily two kinds of shifts. And when we're doing them, especially when we're using two different fingers. For the most part, we can do what's called a romantic shift or a classical shift, and so underhanded or overhanded. It's another way of describing these two shifts. So let me just describe the sort of overhanded shift. And what I mean by that, and we're going to just do 2 to 4, for example. And then second finger, C natural. Fourth finger, G natural. We're shifting to third position. So in a regular classical shift, or like I say, an overhand shift, basically, we're going to use our second finger on C and slide to fourth finger G. And use the second finger E as a guide note. You might know what that is, okay? Here we go. And then we can do that another way, whereby we do a romantic shift, and whereby we shift a little bit with the second finger, but then put the fourth finger down and finish with the fourth finger. Depending on what you're playing, will dictate the sort of sound or the, the color of the shift and the expressiveness of that shift. So if I'm playing something, for example, I'll give you 2 examples. When we play, for example, Mozart, the Mozart D major concerto, that first shift in the exposition, I always would do that with like I say, a classical shift, whereby I shift my first finger to a guide note, to first finger C sharp or C natural, whatever's most comfortable for you, and then drop the fourth finger on F sharp. So, okay? However, if I was going to play something, I don't know, like something from Libya Slide by Fritz Kreisler, for example. His music is definitely much more expressive, much more sort of schmaltzy and whatnot. In that kind of piece, I'm definitely going to use something of more of a romantic shift, whereby, and this is just 1 to 4, much different sound, much different character, much different sort of genre of music, obviously. This is very classical, overhanded. This is much more romantic, and much more underhanded shift. Let me just caution you, when doing romantic shifts, it's very bad to do 2 romantic shifts in a row. It starts to sound sort of just kind of overkill. We don't want to, for example, let's say we're going to play that piece by Fritz Kreisler, the Libya Slide. That sounds kind of gooey and sort of a little bit too much. It's like having some piece of cake that has way too much sugar or way too much icing. It becomes overkill. We don't want to have that much goo. We kind of like to make sure we put a nice romantic shift in at the right time with the right kind of taste and not get carried away with it, if you know what I mean. So, that being said, romantic shifts, for that matter, have a lot of there's lots of options and there's lots of colors, there's lots of speeds at which we can do them. And there's so many different ways to do them, and depending on how you feel on a given day or how a certain piece sounds on a given day, or depending on what the piece or depending on the need, you can basically decide what kind of shift sounds appropriate. And sometimes it's sort of an impulsive thing. When I'm playing in the orchestra, there'll be times where a conductor gives us a certain amount of time, and you can tell he wants to hear something that's a lot more expressive. He'll kind of give us time between 2 notes, and we'll really give it, a certain amount of expression with the actual shift. So, that being said, try these 2 different shifts. Try them and just do them just for the sake of the shift. You can try different excerpts if you like, but for right now, I want to hear you just do a really good, simple classical shift and a real good romantic. That being said, there's also one other thing I need to sort of throw in there. Remembering back to the previous lesson of the sort of finger shifting, the 1 finger shifting, that is a very good applicable principle for doing this romantic shift. especially if we're going to go to a higher position. Let's say, for example, we're going to go from a C natural up to a high G, okay? Or from Sibelius violin concerto. We really want to feel like we have that fingers flat and that we're going to arrive up to something where our finger is upright, sliding on the belly. That's definitely a very useful way of using that sort of one finger shift principle into this romantic shift. Secondly, it's also very, very useful to shift into your note slowly. You can almost sort of practice it such that shift that I just did is a very, very, very big shift. And let's just do it, for example, in one octave, so as not to do the string crossing and the whole sort of, dramatic octaves that we're doing in Sibelius. That's tricky. Let's make it a little bit simpler and just go from one octave. That being said, you can actually practice going to the, let's say a whole step underneath that B flat and shifting very slowly from A flat to get used to basically making the expressiveness really coming out of those last part of the shift from the A flat to the B flat. That way you can kind of get used to the sort of coordination of the hands, the coordination of the bow at the finger, and kind of arriving at a desirable time that sounds expressive. So you can very much be very accurate with this shift if you really kind of learn how to time it properly. Playing shifts accurately most of the time is a byproduct of good timing with the bow and the hand and knowing when you're moving and when you're slowing down. No different than when you're in a car trying to come to a time, a very well-timed smooth stop at a light or wherever you're stopping, as to when you make a turn. If you wait till the last minute and try and hit the brakes real fast, you'll let the car sort of jolt. That's how it would feel if you were coming to a quick stop with your violin on your hand, and then instead of kind of just slowly finding where your destination is and slowing down before it. So, timing of shift with the bow is critical when doing romantic shifts. There are shifts that probably take a little bit more practice and to get really good at making them sound natural and organic and smooth.